This video explains the collaborative development workflow of the Dashjoin platform. Your app consists of database connections, queries, dashboards, and functions. Technically, these are stored in JSON files, which can be managed in a GitHub repository, shown here in the center. The production system simply pulls the app from the repository. This happens via the Dashjoin app URL environment variable. Today we looked at the left side of the picture, specifically how developers make changes, test them, and commit them to the repository. The first step is to create an empty repository via the GitHub UI. In this video, we assume that the repository is public. For private repositories, please refer to the documentation. Dashjoin Studio makes development super easy by bundling all required tools into a Docker container. To get started, we open the documentation, search for Studio, and have a look at the second Docker run command. There's a couple of ports that must be mounted. We have the admin password that's being set, and two environment variables that specify the GitHub repository where your newly created app resides. In this case, we use the Dashjoin-demo, both for the home, the Dashjoin home, and the app URL environment variables. And then finally, we start Dashjoin Studio. So let's do this on the command prompt. So in the command prompt, we paste the command, and this brings up the Docker container, which automatically pulls the application from GitHub and initializes the environment. So Dashjoin Studio is just like a normal Dashjoin platform, so we can open the browser on port 8080 and simply log in with admin and the password that we provided on the Docker command and log into the system. So you can see that the demo application is installed, and we'll make a small change to it to simulate some development. So let's go to the charts, enter the layout editor, select this widget, and change from a bar chart to a line chart. And we save the change. Okay, next we can go to the general information, and from there we navigate to Git. So this is a small Git client basically, where we can pull recent changes from the repository. We can also see the deltas. So we have the fact that we provisioned the admin user, which is reflected in DJ users and DJ roles. And we can also see one change with our change from bar to line charts. So from here, we can also revert the change, but now we'll look at a more, if you need a more powerful way to interact or to develop, to do search and replace, and that is provided by Dashjoin Studio. So as you can see, Dashjoin Studio is a full-blown VS Code development environment. So we can quit these welcome pages, and let's have a look on the left side. So the first folder is the Dashjoin app, which is the demo app that we pulled from GitHub. So that would be your code, where we have the model, we have the database connections, we have functions, the query catalog, and so on. The second part is the actual source code of the Dashjoin platform UI, which you need if you want to create a custom widget. Let's have a look at the functionality. So the first tab, we're in the Explorer mode that we just looked at, browsing files and folders. Search and replace. You can do bulk changes in your application or simply search for certain texts that you might want to replace. Next one is the source control. So that's for us the interesting one. You can double click, you can see these changes, and we can double click the chart. And here you can see the actual change that we performed. You can actually roll back the change if you don't like it. And from here, we can then commit it to the repository, which we'll do in a second. Last but not least, there's some extensions. So you can install further extensions, and you can see that there's a Dashjoin extension installed here, which actually has some very nice features. So for instance, if you open the query catalog and we open the group query, you can see there's some commands here. So we can actually run this query right from this from Dashjoin Studio, and you get the results, or we can run the query metadata, which gives us the metadata of the query. Okay, now let's actually commit our change. So we go back to the source control view, and so we'll have a look at this change that we made. And if we deem this change to be okay, we can say stage a change. and we can provide a comment for the commit. So usually you could reference an issue in the GitHub bug tracking system. We'll just call it test change in here, and we say commit. Okay, so now we get an error message because we actually need to provide the username and the user email before we can commit it. So we click on Learn More, and we trust the source. Then we get to some documentation, and there's actually two command line commands that we need to provide. So we need to specify our username and our email, and we need to do this via the command line. So let's just copy this for here and open a command terminal, and we open that in the Dashjoin app, and in here we paste and we provide the name, and then the same with the user .email. Okay, so once that is done, we'll do the commit again, and this time it worked. And now we'll go into this menu here and say push the change. So we actually push it from the local repository, which is still in the Dashjoin Studio, up to GitHub. So we allow the two-factor authentication, continue and copy this code, and we open the page and now proceed with the two-factor authentication. So once this is complete, we'll have a look at the actual GitHub repository, and there we can check out the commits. And here is our test change, and we can see that it's exactly the change we made on the local environment. So going back to the overall picture, we just stepped through the entire workflow. So we, on the left side, we used Dashjoin Studio to bring up, to clone, to basically make a copy of the demo of the application locally. We made some local changes, reviewed them, committed them to GitHub, and now in order to make this change public on the production, we can either restart the production, which causes another Git pull, or we can go to the Git dashboard and press the pull button from there. So thank you for this video, and also please refer to the documentation for instructions how to work with private repositories. Thank you.